I'm going to go over how to set up a proper dimension style for mechanical drawings, and I'm going to dimension drawing 1. First thing we want to do is add a dimension layer. So create a new layer, call it dims, give it a color, and the dims layer should be set to a default line weight with a continuous line type, and I'm going to go ahead and make it current. Next, we're going to go into dimension styles. Never use the standard dimension style. You also don't want to use the ISO 25. So we're going to create a new dimension style, and I'm going to call this mechanical imperial, and then hit continue. Alright, so now I see my new dimension style, mechanical imperial. Starting with lines, this goes along with the dimension instructions that we went over in class. Baseline spacing is the distance from the first dimension line to a second dimension line, which isn't being shown here, but if we had a second dimension line, how far apart should it be from the first one? And it should be 0.25. The extend beyond dim lines is the distance from the dimension line out to the extension line here, and that should be set to 0.0625, or about a 1/16 of an inch. The origin from the extension line right here to where the actual dimension comes from should be about a 1/16 of an inch. That provides you with that little gap right there that I'm pointing to. Next, we go into symbols and arrows. Under arrowheads, you want to use the closed field arrowheads, but change the arrow sides to 0.125. Set the center marks to line instead of mark. You see what that does here, mark. It gives you the little tick marks in the middle. When you set that to line, it's the same as setting your dim set to a negative value. And we all remember that this should be set to 0.0625. Nothing else gets changed here. Under text, bring in the text that has Romanesque font applied to it. So I already have mine. If you don't have yours, you can click on the ellipsis button and create a font right here, a new one, and then make sure that you apply that font to your text style. Text height should be 0.125. Text placement should be centered, text alignment should be horizontal, and the offset from dim line should be set to 0.06. Go into the Fit tab, and under the Fit options, we're going to set it to arrows go out first if it doesn't all fit inside. And then under the Scale for Dimension features, we're going to choose Annotative. Last, we're going to go to primary units, and this is going to be based on the drawing. Whatever the drawing units are what you want to set your precision to. So this is mechanical drawing units, so decimal is appropriate for this. But if you look at the original drawing and the dimensions that were placed on the original drawing, which we're recreating exactly, there were only 2 decimal places. So I'm going to change that to 2 decimal places. If it was a metric drawing, you'll notice that the dimensions go to whole numbers, so you'd change it to whole numbers. So this is dependent on the drawing itself. It's never a constant. Down under the zero suppression, we want to suppress leading zeros, but we don't want to suppress trailing zeros. So what happens here is we have an R 0.8. I don't want to see the 0 in front, so I'm going to turn on suppress leading zeros, and that makes it R 0.80. If this was a metric drawing, we'd actually leave that on. We're supposed to have a leading 0 for metric drawings. So we have what's called the parent dimension style set up at this point. So I'm going to hit OK. We're going to create 2 other child dimension styles to deal with radiuses and diameters. So I'm going to select the same dimension style, which is current, hit New again. But here's the catch. We're not creating a new dimension style. We're creating a new dimension style just for a particular type of dimension. So I want to create a new dimension style, child variation it's called, for just radius dimensions. So when I use the command DRA for dim radius, it's going to read this information that I put in, but then follow along with the parent dimension style information otherwise. Okay? So when I click on this, notice this grays out, and when I hit continue, I am still in the mechanical imperial dimension style, but I'm in the radial specific information about that particular dimension command. Under the symbols and arrows in radial, we want to actually turn off the center marks because we're going to add them. We've already added them with the DCE command. And then under Fit tab, we want to be able to place the radial dimensions manually. We also want to be able to move the dimensions over the line with a leader, and we also want to put both text and arrows to the outside if they don't fit. Okay, those are the changes. Nothing else changes. For the second child dimension style, we're going to do the same steps. Go to New, Use for diameter dimensions this time, continue, and I want to turn off my symbols again, go to the Fit tab, put both text and arrows to the outside, place text manually. So notice I did not change text placement with diameter. It doesn't need to be. So radius we change to text placement to over dimension lines with leader. Diameter we leave it to beside the dimension line. Okay, so we hit OK and make sure that that still is our current dimension style. Set current and close. Now we're ready to dimension. To add dimensions, we're going to follow along with exactly what we see from the handout. So here's the handout. This is exactly what I want your dimensions to look like, following the dimension rules as discussed in class. So these should be a 3/8 of an inch away from the object, or a 1/2 an inch at the most, and then the distance between these two dimensions are going to be controlled through the dimension style by using the right command at the right time. So I'll start with this top view and show you how to lay out those dimensions. Okay. Using the DLI command, that's short for dim linear, I'm going to place the dimension using this point as my origin and the point at the end of the tick mark as my second point. Now I want this dimension to be exactly 3/8 of an inch away. So notice that I'm tracking off that end point and I'm typing in 0.375. Now the next dimension is the overall dimension. It goes to this origin. This is when you're going to use DBA, which is short for dim baseline. Notice what it does is it attaches itself to the first extension line that I picked over here, and it sets this dimension 1/4 of an inch away from the first dimension that we have. So it automatically does that for you when you use that dimension at the right time. Now lastly, we want to put in a radial dimension in here for the radius of the arc. So I'm going to use DRA, which is short for dim radius. I'm going to select the arc, and you have two options. You can place that right here, or we can place it out here. Actually, I'm going to place it right here, and then I'm going to show you how we can drag that out to move it to a better location. All right, so notice that we can either put it here, or when we put it out here, it doesn't look like the drawing. If you go back into your dimension style and select the radial dimension and hit modify, and then under the lines, you turn off or suppress your extension line 1, you can then take that dimension and drag it out so it's in line with your dimension, like that. Now one of the weird things, this is truly a glitch in AutoCAD, is that arrow disappears. But we're just going to add the arrow back in again. Using LE, which is short for quick leader, I'm going to track from the that spot right here on the arc and track back using nearest. I can select the extension line for the radial dimension and then hit escape, and that's going to put the arrow back in there. So to add the dimensions to the right side view, we're going to use DLI and place your first dimension using DLI, which is just dim linear. Now how far away should this be? It should be exactly the same distance you chose on the first one. So I want to go out 0.375. We're going to do the same thing over here using DLI. I'm going to put the first dimension. So I have to use DLI to place the first dimension. But for the second dimension, because it's an overall dimension that you should use the same extension line, we're going to use dim baseline, DBA. And that's going to attach itself to the last dimension that I just used and allow me to place my second extension line. Now I don't want to continue dimensions from this side, but I want you to look to see that we have an option to select a different extension line to start from. So if we hit enter, it lets you pick a new extension line. Dim baseline, select baseline dimension. I want to pick the one that I started with up here, and it extends from that first extension line and allows me to place the dimension. Last few dimensions are in the front view, and I want them to go from here to here. Now this is one of those examples I don't want to track from here 3/4 of an inch. I want to track from this section here. So if I use your, tracking from that endpoint, dragging out 0.375, That's the correct distance. We want to add a DRA dimension for dim radius for the fillets, and I want that to be the same height as my dimension over here. So see how I can track over from that dimension I've already placed. And then I want to use the DDI command for dim diameter to place the diameter of this circle. And I'm going to use that to track that off of here. And when we're done, we have our finished drawing with correct dimensions. When we do our preview, we now have this fully dimensioned drawing, correct line weights, and our dimensions have been placed according to the dimension rules. And we have a accurately created ASME standard mechanical dimension style that can now be dragged and dropped through ADC into our other drawings that would be appropriate for it to use it.